Good morning, everybody, and happy March 1st. Here's an update on the Waterbury calendar clock. We went from February 28th yesterday to March 1st. Woohoo! So, that was fun. Anyway, let me show you the clock that we're going to work on today. So this is the Hofbrauhaus Schmeckenbecker clock that I got for my husband. He's got two nice little beer drinker clocks now. That one's a Hubert Herr limited edition one that we love. And then the Hofbrauhaus got wound last night. But here's the problem with it. Why does the other weight not fall? If your weights aren't falling evenly, you have a problem. Something's not working right. And that is the weight for the music box. And if I walk up to it, and touch it a little bit, it'll play. But I've got to adjust that music box. Mark Mutterland put out a good video on music boxes recently, and it kind of made it click in my head, so I'm going to make a video and try to talk about the governor and how to adjust it on these top-mounted music boxes. Because like a lot of the things that the Germans did, you think if you lift this it would make it go higher, and it does the opposite. So we're going to talk about the fulcrum system on the governor and how we get these top-mounted ones adjusted right the way they're designed. I took the ends off the chains, released the little beer mug from the front door, took the screws out of the top. So I'm going to slip this out of here. This little wire is probably going to be in our way. I have to slip the little bent wire off of this black lever. It doesn't want to come off of there. There's no room to turn it. Okay, let's see how we're going to get this guy out of there. Definitely not sliding out of that hole. I'm just going to straighten the end of it till I can get it out, kind of like the beer drinker on the front. The mug on the front. I bent the wire straight, so I bent the elbow out of that. Now let's see if I can slide out of there. Everything's going to have to be adjusted again because the wires are all in the way. And if I bend them to get them out of the way, they'll be out of adjustment when I put it back. But that's all right. We will talk about how to do that. All right. So this is the problem with this fan, this little arm. I've kind of tried to bend it back so that the fan can pass when this comes out, and it's not quite bent back far enough. So we're going to talk about the shape of this thing and why it works like it does. So this is the governor on top of your fan. It controls everything that happens. There's 4 arms on this governor. It's kind of shaped like a K, a small K. And then this little knobby goes into your drum to turn off your music. This end has a spring on it. Attaches over here to the housing for your fan. Your fan's down here. This little piece has to stop the fan when the music stops, but it has to get out of the way and let the fan turn to play your music. You have to think of this as a fulcrum. This long arm, the 2 ends. This end has the wire that activates it. This end has the spring that shuts it off. And it's attached in the middle. There's a screw in the middle. Makes all 4 of these arms work. If you've ever moved a long piece of 2x4 or a long pipe, you know that if you move this end an inch or 2 trying to line it up on your mark, the other end moves about 4 or 5 inches the other direction, depending on how long your board is. And so it's the same with this. With it being attached in the middle, with this arm moving, it moves the opposite side a lot more. So when this end gets pulled by this little wire right here, this arm is going to come out of your drum, and this arm is going to go back. The whole thing's going to turn and release this. If this little arm is not releasing your fan, I was thinking you had to bend that out of the way. But I can go to the opposite end of that fulcrum. Even though it's bent, this works the same as this straight one. So if I want this arm to move more out of the way, I'm going to move this arm not that way, that way. If I move this arm in more, if I have this arm bent into the drum more, it's going to lock this down onto the fan more, but when this moves away from the drum, it's going to push it further away from the fan. So my adjustment for this, because it's hanging up right here and holding this, I'm going to bend this arm more into the drum and then put the chain on it and see how it does. I don't know if that moved it much. It doesn't need to move it too much. It's barely catching, so let's put the chain on and see what we do. It played nicely, and it shut off nicely, but I'm gonna try it again just in case it was a fluke. I got my little marks on my board for how far this needs to be pulled out to activate. So I'm going to pull that little elbow that's in it out to that far mark. It's not catching on the music at all. And it's shutting off nicely, so I think we are there. But I'm also going to reverse this and try it from the other side, because when it's in your clock, it's hanging up this way. So I want to make sure that that arm is coming out and doing what it's supposed to when it's in the correct position too. Not catching it all on the fan and holding it up. It's playing nicely every time. So I'll have to put it back in the clock, make the adjustments on the 2 upright arms that activated and stopped the fan, and then we'll see if we fixed it. I've never used my Cuckoo mounting stand in this fashion before. I put the music box in it. So I'm down here under it, simulating what it's going to do inside the clock. Got the weight on it, my little wires hanging straight down here. Let's see, it's going to pull it this way. Pretty good little test setup system, because I can check where the wire's falling in, that this little guy goes back in there, that it shuts itself off easily with the weight, that it's not clicking on the fan on that little arm. And my little marks that are on my board straight up under my finger tell me how far it's going to pull it out. I drew pencil marks. I drew pencil marks at the end of this elbow right there, where it's going to be bent up in the air again. So when it's straight over here, I drew one line where it's at rest, and then how far it's got to come out to make the music box work. So there's 2 little pencil lines up there, about quarter of an inch or less apart. So one more test before I put it back in the box, because it's a pain. We're going to struggle to get it back in that box. So if it pulls it far enough, it's definitely going to work. Okay, let's see how easily we can get this back in here. I'm going to try to get this wire, which has to be on this side of the little beer mug. I'll try to get this back in there far enough to get that through the hole. And the fun part's going to be trying to get chains where they need to be and get past the bird tail lift wire and the fan holding wire. It's way easier if you can fix it right the first time. Yeah, how often does that happen? Every once in a while you get lucky, I guess. Okay, I'm not up there far enough yet. So let's push that over. And get the beer mug behind the little shut-off arm, which should let me come forward. Yay. Okay, now I gotta try to get the wire in the hole, because it went all the way down in there. I'm going to put the hemostats on that and try not to leave a lot of teeth on it. This one's pretty smooth because you don't want a bunch of grooves, ridges catching on that hole on the inside and keeping this from sliding nice and easy. And it fell back out. Dang it. Alright. I'm going to get a couple screws in that, in the roof. With it laying flat on its back like that, and this resting all the way to the front, the holes automatically lined up on this clock, so it wasn't hard to get the screws back in the holes. So that's all I have done. The chain is still wadded up there at the top. I'll try to get it out of the holes at the bottom with my magnet. Once I figure out which one is which. That is the front, so we're going to slip the end of this in there to the back hole. It wants to fall in the front one. To the back hole. Alright, and here's the front one. Okay, time to put the mug back on the door and bend the hook on the end of the end of my little wire is still straight out. I've got to make an L out of it and put the thing back on the front door. So let's do that. I've got my smallest wire bending tool. It's a little metal with a slot in it. You could do that with pretty much any piece of round metal. The handy part is it's got this if you had to do a bunch of stuff. If you don't have any kind of wire bending tool, you can use 2 pair of pliers. Put one on the straight end and one on the end you want to bend. Put the straight one pretty close to where you want it to bend, and then bend your tip back up. Put about a 90 back on that. Let's see if that's good enough. Maybe not. Alright, that's pretty straight up. Okay, put the guy back on the door. If you can get the wire out the hole before you flip it over, it helps. But half the time you drop it and you have to fight with it again. Like that. Alright, he's back on. I'm going to put some weights on here. We'll put it on the test stand. One viewer commented on this guy's arm. I did kind of wiggle his arm after I had it on here. Kind of put some force pulling it out to try to change the angle. I may check that while I'm in here. Make sure it's moving like I want. It does make a lot of racket when that guy's arm moves. but nothing's binding up. Alright, it's on the test stand, the weights are back on it, and as soon as I put the weight on the music box, it started playing and wouldn't shut off, which is not surprising because I had bent that, I had bent this little piece of my K-shaped thing into the drum more. So that's going to let that go further left, which is going to put more tension on that little wire I just bent the L into. You can't see my piece of paper, can you? Since I had bent this leg of the little K into the drum more, the little wire that's on this one with the little L shape on the end that I just rebent is going to be further that way. So that arm, the black arm right here that goes up to activate your music box, is going to be putting more pressure on that wire because I moved everything that way some. So it was not letting it shut off. It wasn't letting that fall into the drum. I just put my finger in and pushed it slightly to the left, and it let it shut off. It didn't have to move much. So anyway, I'm going to turn the dial and see what we got here. Here's the half hour. Nothing, no music. So I pushed this too much. It didn't go over far enough to pull it out of there. And this needs adjusted also. So all of these got moved with me slipping that out of there and putting it back in there and making changes on the music box. So we're going to have to adjust all of that stuff. It is far enough. This black activating lever is far enough to the left because it lets the music shut off. You gotta have, I gotta get a pointer. You gotta have, I gotta get you where you can see. Hang on. You gotta have a gap between the end of this lever and the elbow on the wire so that it can shut off and not have pressure on it. It doesn't take much pressure to pull it out of that hole. So there's got to be a little gap right here at the end. But there's too much gap because it didn't pull it far enough out to activate. And also this wire was letting the music play. So I've got to bend the end of this wire over in front of my fan more. And if you bend it over too far, your cuckoo won't shut off at all. But it did shut off, so maybe that's a good spot. I usually try to aim for right about to the right hand side of where the governor attaches. There's an open space there in front of your fan. Here's your fan right here. And this little wire can move in front of where the fan is attached to hold the fan from playing too soon and making your music play at the same time as your cuckoo. And then it's got room to go where these are bent kind of curved. That's the lowest spot, so it's got room to come back over. Okay, so this guy is the next piece I gotta move. The only way to move that thing is to have this out of the box and adjust the screw, the set screw on it. So what I end up doing when I need to make small adjustments is holding it with pliers and bending the tip of it where I need to bend it. And I don't think I can do that on camera. I don't think y'all will see anything. Our hands will all be in the way, so I'll just tell you what I'm doing. And sometimes it's easier to do it when you don't have the weights on it. Because every time you touch something, it wants to activate. And if you don't have the weight on it, it won't do it. Alright, here's the hour. I need to adjust this. The there it went down. My little beer drinker on this side, his arm was sticking up in the air, and when it sticks up in the air, it actually hangs up. The minute hand is long enough to hang up on it. But the problem is my star wheel, and it did this on the last one that I worked on. After I got it all back together, I had to adjust the star wheel. When it is done, you do not want this gong lever sitting on one of the stars, and this pushing, not quite letting this, see, my bellows is not closed. So when this comes around to the bottom, I'm going to loosen that set screw and adjust this star just a little bit to let the hands on the front move like they're supposed to, and the bellow to close all the way. It should be going down to there, and you see it's not because the star wheel's holding it up. Alright, so here we go to the hour. It's made contact with the L-shaped wire good. I don't think it pulled it over far enough. It did not pull it over far enough. Where are my little lines on there? Oh yeah, my black bar is probably that far to the left of the two lines that I penciled in on the music box wood. So I need to get that moved over some. Let me get set the camera off and do that, where I can lay it down and get up in there good, and then I'll meet you back. Okay, I held this little black circle right there with pliers so I could move that to the right, and that worked for me. I've got it lined up on my left hand pencil mark, and it's going to pull it to the right, hopefully to my other pencil mark. And I'm going to activate this, and when it goes into warning, you're going to see that it's going to start playing because this wire up and down is not adjusted right. So right now I'm working on the black lever, then I work on this wire. Activation, pause, shut off. 3 things you got to check. Right now we're doing activation. That's it going into warning. Pulling the lever. I'm way past my second mark, so it's definitely pulling it far enough out of the hole. So as long as it lets it shut off, then this black activating lever is in a good spot. That's curious, because I watched the governor come way out of there, so I know it pulled it far enough to play, but it didn't play. Here's the half hour. See, if yours music's doing that, starting to play when it goes into warning, your fan's not adjusted to the right spot, because it should stop it. Alright, so that was warning for the half hour. Let's see. Now it's too far over. It's hitting when it shouldn't be. Alright, let's do the hour. There's warning. It's got the governor pulled. The little arm is out of the drum. This arm is stopping the fan from turning. The other little hooked arm has released the fan. And it is pulling it way over. Nothing. So it's coming out and going back in the hole, it looks like. We're going to go around to the half hour again. And all I did was wiggle the governor some because sometimes it can get caught at a weird angle and not want to do its thing. So I want to see if I have to bend something else. Yep, I'm going to have to bend something else because it is letting it fall right back in the same hole. This is activating way farther than I need. I'm going to push slightly back the other way. And try again. If it's put pressure on it, maybe that's why it's not letting it drop down where it needs to on the drum. Alright, so that let it play. Alright, so just to recap why it was going back in the hole again, I did not do anything to bend and change how this was attached or where this was going when it pulled out and dropped in. When this wire pulls the governor arm to the right and takes it out of that hole, and then it takes the pressure off, it should kind of drop down, up, in this case, up into towards the top of the clock and not go straight back in the hole. But if you've got too much pressure on this wire, it can't move like it normally would. It can't pivot right there on that little screw. So I bent this lever a little bit more back to the left to give it some more gap. There's got to be a space right there to let it play freely. So half hour. So I've still got it adjusted too far to the right because this is a one-song music box and it shouldn't play on the half hour. The little hurricane symbol on the front of my minute arbor is shorter than, the one arm is shorter than the other. So on the half hour it should not push this far enough to activate and play the music. If you got a two-tune music box, it's going to move enough to activate it every half hour. But on a one-tune music box, you got to get this adjusted to the right spot where it moves some on the half hour but not enough to activate it, and then further on the hour. So I am still too far to the right with this arm because it shouldn't activate it on the half hour. I'm way over from my lines, so we'll see. It may not do anything now. Here's the hour. It's pulling it plenty far enough. That looks good. So my two pencil lines are a guide. It's got to go, this black lever should be on this mark to let it shut off or further that way, and it's further that way. It should go on this mark to activate or further, and it does. So the two pencil lines are a guide of where this black piece has to move through, and it looks like I've got it kind of centered and it's doing the right thing. Here's the half hour. Did not activate. Perfect. Hour. And half hour. One more time. See, it does pull it. But that's where I was earlier when it would pull it and go right back in the same hole. It doesn't pull it enough to make it do anything. So this one's ready to go back on the wall. When this little screw got to a good spot, I did adjust this where there's a tiny bit of gap right there above my gong lever, and that sprocket right there, and that lets this close all the way. And so I'm gonna go hang it back up and let it run overnight, and we'll look and see if the weights are even tomorrow. Well, it has run overnight, and that's pretty promising. They're pretty even. It looks like maybe one time the music box didn't shut off because it's longer than the other ones, but it definitely played every time, so that's a win. If it had not run during the night and I was going to have to get back in there, the thing I would look at would be the black lever that activates everything, because I moved it several times. The set screw might need to be tightened, and that would be a whole different video, because it would have to, I'd have to pull everything out from the inside to do that from the front of the movement. So this is good news, yay. Thanks for watching. Hope this helps you guys adjust your music boxes. I know it's challenging on these top mounted ones. Leave me some comments.